Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we get underway with the agenda, I'd like to cover a few administrative matters. First off, the fire exit is located to your left. In the event of a fire, you will be notified by an announcement. If you're notified of a fire, please move in a calm and orderly fashion to the exit. Do not use either the elevator. Use either the north or the south stairs to leave the building. The meetings are being recorded for the purpose of a record and minutes. When you come to the podium, we'd ask that you identify yourself each time with your name. The first time you come, we'd ask that you provide your name and your address. We will follow the items in the order that they appear on the agenda. There are extra copies of the agenda on the table near the door. Once the case has been called, the applicant or their representative will come to the podium, identify himself or herself, state their address, raise their right hand, be sworn, and then present their case to the board. During their presentation, the members of the board may ask questions or engage in discussions with the applicant. Once that process has been concluded, we'll then open up the case for public hearing and public input. There are three categories of public input that we recognize. First is those who wish to speak in favor of the application. Then we recognize those who wish to speak in opposition to the application. And then we open it to those who aren't sure if they're for or against the application but want to talk to us about it. Once we've concluded those three categories of public input, we will allow the applicant to come up again and review or discuss further anything that came up during the public input portion of the hearing. Once that's been concluded, the case will be closed, and we'll then move on to the next case on the agenda. After all the cases have been heard, the board will take a short recess, and then we will return after that to deliberate with respect to each of the cases. No further input is allowed during the deliberation portion. You're welcome to stay and listen if you wish, or if you leave and you're interested in knowing what the decision was on the case, you can either catch it on TV or call the Planning and Zoning Department tomorrow after 9, and they'll be glad to tell you what the decision was on each of the cases. Normally, we take all the cases in the order that they appear on the agenda. Tonight, however, we've been asked, because of a death in the family, to consider the tabled case and allow Ms. Schmidt to make her presentation and have her case first. So is there a motion to remove case number ZB1409-3 from the table? Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries, 7 in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, and all 7 members of the board are here. So Ms. Schmidt, if you'd like to come forward.
Hi, I'm Katrina Schmidt, 22 Rudman Road. I have to raise my hand.
Do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm revisiting this. I've already presented my case last month. In regards to this, it was tabled. A couple of my neighbors have come to speak in favor, just so you know, and I don't know if there's any other information that was needed from the board or if my previous case is sufficient.
I did have one question.
Yes.
You had mentioned before that your chickens were seen by a veterinarian. Is that
Correct.
correct? How frequently would you take your chickens to be seen by the vet?
I do initially, just like once a year, like once they're adults, and then beyond that, unless I see a reason to. It's not necessary unless they're showing symptoms of something.
Would it create an undue hardship on you if we were to request that you were to take the chickens in once a year?
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
In that vein, I think you mentioned last time that it's possible to, I guess for lack of a better term, vaccinate the chickens to prevent disease or something?
You're not able to vaccinate, you're able to regularly test to make sure that they are disease-free. Chickens are not a vaccinatable creature, really, but if they do acquire a disease of some kind, they're treatable, so I would check if it's requested that it's yearly. I would have them yearly tested and as a result treated, but
I think you indicated the last time that you work part-time for a vet, right?
I do.
Are ducks vaccinable animals?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, all right.
You can give them like medicated feeds and stuff, but that's when they're chicks it's like the same thing as a mother's milk when an animal's a baby. It gives them needed antibiotics and things of medicated chick feed when they're babies, but there's really not anything you can do when they're adults, other than cleanliness and general upkeep, but.
We're learning a lot about animals on the zoning board.
I guess I have a comment and a question before we move off this. The first one is anything that we were to stipulate like this, would that become, and this is more of a question for council, we have to look at it in the context of a town code change? I don't know if we could require someone to do this. I guess we can think about that for a while. And the second one is, as a course of the last, because we have 4 of these on the agenda tonight, I did talk to Cornell Cooperative Extension and a number of other towns, just talking to them about best practices and different things they've seen in terms of vaccination. That was more where I was going, in the sense that they're not really a vaccinatable, it's not a typical type situation where, especially the people at the Cornell Cooperative Extension, we're not as familiar with seeing this chickens being vaccinated regularly. It wasn't a good thing that the owner decided to go above and beyond, but we had some difficulty finding more information, because I know that was something the board wanted to look at, was in terms of, is that a reasonable request of someone? It didn't appear in that, and talking to other towns, that was something that was common. I think if we were going to propose it, we should just know more about the vaccine portion of it, and I wanted to report back. In terms of that, there was not definitive information that was a practice that was common in the keeping of poultry. I'm not saying pro or con, I'm just saying that was, in terms of the research that we looked at, we couldn't find that as being something that was common, so.
Yeah, and I think those are good points, and I think just in general, when we're thinking about potential, because it feels like we're maybe thinking of potential conditions that you may want to place on these types of permits, just to keep in mind that in general, any conditions that you place on a special permit should be reasonably related to sort of offsetting some sort of perceived negative impact or harm that could be realized from the granting of the permit. So, if these chickens are going to be confined and maintained on the property, and which I assume they are, what sort of are you trying to prevent by requiring something like a veterinary visit? And also just keeping in mind the enforceability of it, that, we want to make sure that the conditions are such that it's not going to be any sort of undue burden on the code officer or the town to have to make sure that they're being properly enforced and upkept.
So if we were to impose a condition that required an annual submission by the owner to the town by a certain date every year of some certification or proof that the animals had been looked at by a veterinarian, would that be unduly burdensome on a permit officer?
I don't think that's the question. I think it's more of what are we exactly looking for in that process of, if it's to say the chickens are healthy or not, I'm just trying to understand better where you're coming from, because I don't think it's a bad idea.
My question was that wouldn't burden the officer too
And
much,
it
right?
depends on the technical nature of the information that would be provided. That would a town staff member be adequately trained enough to pass judgment on a veterinary checkup? I don't know. I don't know that I could speak to that right now.
Right, and what if there were maybe some issues revealed by the checkup, and where are you drawing the line?
Right, if the chicken had a cold.
Right.
Or if the chicken
Are
had
we
a
doing something about
flu,
that, right?
I'm just trying to be practical about it. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I just wanted how in administration, how that would work.
If all the code officer was obligated to do under a condition was to ensure that the homeowner complied with the condition and submitted something to the town by a specified date every year, that wouldn't be too burdensome, I would think. It's kind of like a dog permit. You have to license the dog every year. You have to send a check into the town, renew the license. The burden's on the homeowner, not the town.
Sure.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm kind of interested tonight, before we even get, the cart before the horse here, is to find out how the ones coming in tonight after a year have made out.
Right, and normally we would have called her case last, but because she has a death in the family and has to leave, we jumped her to the top. So I was trying to accommodate her so she could leave and join her family, and then we'd get the update from the town on the existing chickens.
Well, I think-
Deliberating on
Yeah, I
her particular
understand.
case would come at the end anyway.
Yes,
So
right.
I understand that, and that's a valid point, but I think we have a lot to learn here tonight, too.
Oh, we
about
do.
how the others fared, which could affect this one, that's the only thing. So, I don't know if, after her presentation, we have to act right away, or can we wait and actually deliberate and make a decision later in the meeting?
Oh, no, we would deliberate later in the meeting at our usual time.
Anytime, anyway.
Right, we're just allowing her presentation to be concluded so she can leave
That's
and
right,
join her family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one comment on the idea of having an annual health check. What you're really looking for is whether they have salmonella, whether it's positive or negative.
Right.
That's the illness that's prevalent in chickens and ducks. You agree?
Yes, that's one of, but yes.
And it doesn't have to be some fancy medical report that goes pages. It's whether they're positive or negative.
I was envisioning a letter with 2 or
Yeah.
3 sentences.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. The other question, I noticed a couple of the applicants tonight have said the animals that they have, whether it be chicken or ducks, when they're gone, they don't intend to get any more.
Okay.
So if we put a condition on your application that you could keep what you got, which I know you're attached to,
Yeah.
but when they leave you in some fashion or another, you wouldn't replace them.
Not if the town didn't allow me to. I'd prefer, I've
You'd
always
like to.
had chickens. This is actually my 4th brood. I've always lived in an area where it was accepted, and so I'd wait for an entire brood to pass before I'd start again with fresh chicks. It's kind of hard to introduce little babies into an established flock, so I would wait until they all pass and then revisit the issue at that time.
how long does a chicken last? How many years?
I've heard up to 8.
Yeah, 5 to 7 is what I'm reading.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's in the ballpark.
So one of the things that we might consider is putting a limitation on that would be for the current animals, and that once they've passed, that a new brood could be a new application.
New application.
And then we could look at everything and consider everything. I mean,
I can
by
do
that point, we might have more knowledge and experience with chickens, ducks, and other exotic animals that are working their way into the town.
Yes.
I never knew that zoning encompassed animals, but it does. So you said that, did you have anything, were there any other questions from the board or comments? You said that there were some people here to speak in favor of the application. If you'll come forward. Did you have anything else that you wanted? I didn't mean to cut you short.
No, sir.
Okay.
Hello,
Hello. Your names, please?
I'm Anthony Spinello,
Darcy Spinello. We're a married couple that lives right next door to Katrina.
14 Rudman Road.
Thank you.
And Katrina asked us to come and, she had told us what was going on with this. And living right next door to her, I've heard some of the concerns, I guess, that were brought up in the previous meeting. And we don't share any of those concerns. We live right next door. We haven't heard when she first got them, we had no idea she even had them. She's got a fantastic coop for them. They're not just out roaming around. And the fact that she works at Dr. Bolanik's office, who I know takes care of plenty of wild animals, birds, I have all the faith in the world that she knows what she's doing when it comes to the safety. I mean, she's had them before, and I don't personally see any reason why it should be a problem. Again, she's got them completely contained. They're not just, roaming around the neighborhood.
You haven't noticed any increase in any unwanted animals in the neighborhood?
No, and I'll tell you what, if we could ever do something about the 30 cats that roam around the neighborhood, that would probably be a better use of time, honestly. But no, I mean, you've got animals. It's, Irondequoit. I'm sure there's coyotes, foxes. I haven't noticed any. We have a dog, and it hasn't concerned us any with, any animals being around, especially being that she's got them in a coop, and she's got a completely fenced-in yard. I don't.
It's completely, I didn't even know she had chickens. I really had no idea until she mentioned it. We went in the backyard, we looked at them, we looked at the coop, it was just immaculate, everything was, she has her dogs, and
Yeah,
everything's kept very, very nicely.
And it's obvious
she knows what she's doing.
She knows what she's doing, and she's very much an animal person, so it's not
Yeah.
like I don't believe for a second she'd allow her chickens or any of her animals to have whatever disease or anything and not treat it, not take care of it. So
she's
it's
very
not a
responsible.
concern for us being right next door at all.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this application? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? And anyone who'd like to come up and talk to us about it? All right,
Chairman, I'll just say, in the course of inspecting the four, I don't know if you want me to give in the context of the four we were looking at, the chicken coops, this was clearly the most well-kept one. And if we were going to set forth some examples for how you might want to keep them, in terms of the setup they have, was the best. In terms of contained, it was clean. The feed was not anywhere near the ground or able for other rodents or, I think this is the type of stuff was this the type of stuff you guys were looking for in terms of the inspections?
Yep.
So, but in terms of the smell or the number of them, there was not a noticeable smell that was discernible from this when I inspected it. At the time, I believe there was only two. I could not hear them, and even when you kind of got them going a little bit, it wasn't loud, but no more so than your dog probably would be. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There was a fully enclosed fenced area too, so that the chickens wouldn't be able to get out. That's what I observed when I.
So there's a fenced coop inside a fenced yard?
Correct.
Okay.
And
Double
and
layer
I had presented last time too, he mentioned that there was two. I had mentioned that if things go in my favor, I have a friend who's looking to rehome too, so it would turn to 4 if it's okay.
I think you had asked for permission for 4, up to 4.
I did.
Yeah, okay. All right. Then we'll close this case. Our condolences, and
Thank you.
we'll let you know.
Thank you.
Now we can go back to the top of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, should we mention that 2 of the tabled items are not going to be heard tonight? in
That would
case
probably be
someone's-
good, yes.
Do you want to do that?
Sure. Case number ZB14096 pertaining to property at 1873 Portland Avenue will not be heard tonight at the applicant's request. That is going to be heard at a later date. Case number ZB1408-3 is also not going to be heard tonight at the applicant's request, so that will be heard at a later date. Both of those items can be brought off the table whenever the applicants indicate that they would like to proceed, but between now and whenever they make that indication, the adjournment is with their consent, so the time for those who are interested is not chargeable to the board, and we are not under any legal obligation to make any determination to avoid a determination being made for us by inaction.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
ZB 1410-1, upon matter of request by Petrilla Phillips LLP for an area variance to install internally illuminated building-mounted sign on premises 2701 Culver Road in an R6 residential district.
Thomas Petrella, 2701 Culver Road.
Michael Phillips, 2701 Culver Road is our office address.
All right, if you'd both raise your right hands, do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, it is.
So you'd like to put a sign for your business on the side of your building?
Yes.
That is correct.
We're both certified public accountants, and we moved into the building approximately 1 year ago. We have 2,500 square feet, and there are 14 employees, including Tom and myself. We're two of the CPA partners, and we have a couple other CPAs in the office as well.
The sign faces the east, faces Culver Road, it'll face the east. Right on the face of the top of the building.
And this is the same building that a while ago we approved the urgent care sign for, right?
Correct.
And are there any other signs on the building? I can't recall.
No, just the 2701 address sign, that's all.
So it's urgent care and then your business. Is there any unrented vacant space in the building besides those two?
There's one space downstairs that's currently unrented, yes.
So there's total 4 suites.
There's only 4 slots.
Three suites are rented now, and there's a 4th space on the ground floor on the north side of the building.
Correct.
Roughly 3,600 square feet.
And 2 of the occupants have signs, the urgent care and you'd like a sign,
We
right?
would like
one,
a sign.
yes.
Right.
And the other occupant of the building is,
Rochester Brain and Spine,
well, they don't have a sign, right?
they do not have one now, no. We don't know if they've made application for one or not.
Okay.
The building space has the 2701 on the canopy, and actually above it, it does say Culver Medical Building in non-illuminated letters. They are on 2 faces of the building. And we need the sign so our clients know that we're in the building.
Basically, what happened last year, without the sign, we moved in, and we lost probably around 125 clients, personal clients.
Because they thought you were in a medical building
Yeah.
and you wouldn't be
Even
in
though
a
we put
medical
out
building.
postcards and mailers, people
They drive by, they
drove
see the
by like we
building,
weren't even
but
there.
no implication that we're in the building.
Yeah.
So it's important to us, and the firm has been there for
And we've
over
been there
40
for
years.
40 years, but.
And
Well, you had the house that they
Yeah,
knocked down
yeah,
to put the
exactly,
building
right.
up, right?
Right, yes.
Yeah.
One question I have, illumination. I assume most of your do your clients come and visit with you after normal business hours?
Tax season until probably 8 o'clock at night.
Okay.
And the specs on the sign include it's internally
Yeah.
illuminated, and then, at the board's request, we didn't determine yet what timing that would be on, but most likely would set it to a dusk to dawn system so that we don't have to worry about a mechanical timer failing, and then it would just go on and off with the building lights. And we don't have to worry about it in the summer, that at 4 o'clock in the afternoon it's on when nobody could see it if it was on or off. And it's LED
Yeah.
illumination on the inside, which should conserve electricity and not really create any kind of glare that would be objectionable.
Would there be an issue if we were to put a limitation on so it could not be illuminated after 10 o'clock or after 11
that'd be
o'clock at
fine.
night?
No, that would be okay.
That'd be fine.
And this is what it's going to look like.
Correct.
Yes.
It's
the-
approximately 2 feet tall by 15 foot wide with 13-inch letters.
Nice looking sign, yeah.
Yeah, it may not, but the image probably is not exactly to scale. When the sign company put that together, and then I reproduced the copies,
Yeah.
it may or may not be to scale. I think it's probably very difficult in Photoshop to do all the scaling.
Yeah, but I think we get the idea.
Yeah.
It's nice.
But it's not going to be, 5 foot
No.
bigger or anything like that.
It won't be as bright as the urgent care sign, which is red and black with a red cross on it.
A
Right.
little more subtle.
People don't need to find their accountants as urgently as urgent care.
I don't know.
And most don't want to.
If you owe taxes, you need to find us.
Yeah, that's right. They can leave you and go to urgent care.
That's it. We send them right downstairs.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone here who'd like to come up and chat with us about it? All right, seeing none, we'll close the hearing with respect to that matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then, It had been my intention before I knew about Ms. Schmidt's need to go first. This seemed like an appropriate place since we have the chicken and duck cases left to get the report on those applications that we've granted in the past before we called other cases, so that we could have a general discussion about how the past, I guess it's been 2 years that we've had approved chickens and ducks in town.
Yeah, these go back to 2012. Some of them were issued with a year look back, some were issued with 2 years. All of them required, like I said, obviously, taking over in the last 9 months, these were supposed to be inspected 6 months into it, so obviously this is after the fact. But as in the process of trying to get ahead, and catching up on things, we went through, and I went out to these sites over the past couple weeks and inspected them. There were not general guidelines in the decisions, if you will, but I could kind of glean where we were going. So I inspected for appearance, general appearance, sounds, albeit that is anecdotal, because you're only there for the 15 minutes that you're there, and if we heard any complaints about sounds, right? The smell, the general smell, if it was unkempt and you could smell in the surrounding area, that obviously would be something we'd want to know. Whether or not they adhered to the number that was specified in the granting of the special use permit, and then if there were other factors that I noticed or came up as the course of it. And after doing that, I can say generally all of them stayed within, all three that we've seen aside from Rudman Road had the appropriate number. They didn't have more than they were supposed to. So in that regard, they adhered to the code. And this is just the facts. I'm not editorializing this, so don't think that, for people at home, that they're already allowed by town code via special use permit. So I'm just giving you guys the information as I saw it when I was there. In terms of smell, generally, it wasn't something that I saw at any of the particular sites that was too bad. I found that people seemed to be maintaining at the 3 sites as well as you could as a chicken coop, acknowledging that it is a chicken coop. So there wasn't one particular one that I could look to and say that it was, I could say the one's better. Rudman Road, clearly, their chicken coop was smaller in nature and more well-kept, I would say, generally than the other 3, which were larger in size. In terms of chicken versus ducks, I did notice, and I after speaking to some colleagues in other towns, that ducks tended to be louder. And I did notice that even when approaching. I don't know if I just scared ducks more than chickens, which I guess is possible, but they appeared to be louder, if you will. In their spaces they were in, I think were generally bigger, and I guess maybe that would have to do practically from the fact that they're a little bit larger of an animal. But they did appear to be a little bit louder in terms of the community character aspect of looking at these special use permits.
I have a question for you. Did you meet with the people during these visits, or were they not home?
They weren't home.
Did they have any advance warning that you were coming?
No. Or actually, the only reason they may have known that I would be coming is because we talked about it at the last zoning board meeting. So that was this was totally unannounced, and I had the right to go on, because there is a pending, special use permit / zoning board decision. I could go and inspect the property. But I think that generally, if we were to look at it, the main things that, and even talking to Cornell Cooperative Extension, is making sure that these are enclosed spaces that are fenced, that people aren't, and I didn't encounter any that were just wandering around, which is what I was concerned about when you're thinking about rodents and other animals that could be attracted to that, and the feed, where you keep it. The Cornell Cooperative Extension was big on making sure that you knew that the feed had to be in a secure area, because that's actually what will more often than not draw other animals to the area to eat the feed. I'm trying to think.
Where did you find the feed stored? Was it?
If I could find it, it was either up off the ground, or if it was in like a bin,
Plastic bin
or I didn't see any, I guess what I was looking for was for it to obviously be laying out in the open, which I didn't see. I was looking pretty hard for that in particular because that was something that the Cornell Cooperative Extension was very big on, making sure that you found where that was, because that would trigger a problem if that was obviously readily available. Another thing was the managing of the chicken manure. It's clear that there was, this was being managed because this, if it wasn't, I assumed that I would be able to smell it. I didn't encounter any bad, overly bad smells. It is a chicken or duck coop. It's not, a flower garden, if you will. I'm trying to think if there's.
You keep referencing, like, the smell wasn't that bad. If you were in the front yard, could you smell it? If you
No,
were
and I
10
guess
feet
that's what I
away,
was looking
5
for.
feet away?
Even if you were in the backyard, you really couldn't, where you would be, you couldn't smell it unless you were up next to it.
Up next
So I
to
was
meaning,
up next to the coop. So I guess what I also looked at is if I went over to the fence that was abutting someone's property, could I still smell it? And I didn't. That's not to say someone could say that they smelled it. I'm just saying at that particular day when I went last week that I didn't smell it. And same thing with the noise. Again, that's anecdotal. The chickens, and this is similar to what I heard from some other towns from talking to Penfield and Brighton when they had their, in terms of the noise, ducks tended to be louder. Chickens were not as loud. Trying to think if there's anything else that I would have observed that was.
Can I ask, are there any other towns that are having an extreme issue with this that are, where it's been a problem?
The towns I've spoken to, and even speaking to the Cornell folks, I think people recognize that sustainability, that type of thing is
Popular.
popular and folks want it. I think other towns, I know that there's two surrounding towns, Penfield and Brighton, that are exploring their codes and how they deal with it. We do it by special use permit. Is there another way we should be approaching it? That's certainly, but that's not really relevant, I guess, for tonight's conversation in terms of how they're going, but it certainly caused us to take a look at this, because this is not people seem to want to have them, and it's not a trend that appears to be going away, so.
Nick, your overall impression?
I did not, again, I don't want to give, it's already allowed. I didn't see anything that, because it is already allowed, that would cause me to say that, and that's these applicants, so there's not to say there's not other applicants out there, because we'll have a few more that come in the coming weeks. I didn't see anything that was not in line with what the use permit they were granted. That's not to say that there's not issues that we'll hear from tonight in terms of noise and sound and smell that have come up over the time. I did find that generally there's a feeling that there's probably folks that don't just want, or they shouldn't be chickens in town in general, and I think that's a valid, point of view if that's where you're coming from, but that's not really what's at hand. The town code allows it via special use permit, so that's the thing we have to keep it on. So I've tried to keep it devoid of any, feelings, if you will.
Right.
Just keep it on what was already allowed and what I observed when I was there.
With respect to the applications that we've granted in the past, has the town received complaints from neighbors with respect to the properties that have been allowed to have chickens or ducks or that kind of animal? And if so, what is the nature of the complaints and how many have there been? if you
There's
know?
one, next month, there'll be one on that we have received complaints. In
Okay.
terms of the complaints in general, all around one thing, it's the noise, typically. And I wouldn't say, when I say a lot, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, I would say between 3 to 6 complaints in the past 9 months I've been here, and that's not counting, obviously, the years past, but in the complaints start out as the noise and then just say, generally, the folks calling are more along of just saying they don't believe chickens should be
in the
allowed.
town.
Is it,
And,
is
you know.
it one particular property, or is it a couple different properties?
It's one particular property that most of the complaints are generated from. The next month.
And it's not on tonight.
It's not on tonight. And if there were, I printed out this just to see if there were any other complaints. I mean, on the prior one, I think the complaint more on Rudman Road was the fact that they didn't have a variance, and the people knew that they needed one.
Right.
But I did not see ones that were lodged. I'm just triple checking for tonight, and that's not to say that there maybe was one along the lines that got missed, but generally they seem to be the sound is the biggest concern.
On the sound issue, did you hear any noises from the chickens or ducks?
The ducks I did.
Were they any louder than a dog?
Well, and that's actually something that's pointed out in the Cornell
My
Cooperative
neighbor's
Extension.
dogs are really annoying, and I can't imagine that the ducks are louder than those dogs.
They said that the squawking of a hen during egg laying can be. I'm serious. This is by decibel. There was actually a court case in California. Is it 63 dBA, which I assume is decibels, the way it was explained to me, and that a dog is somewhere around 100. So that's a context for it. Now, there was some that I think would argue that maybe this would cause dogs to bark more often than not. Given
So
where
mailmen.
yeah, but given where some of these were located, for instance, I think that also plays a factor in maybe how you could interact with your neighbors and your dogs. So I think taking into account maybe how their lots are configured in terms of where you're putting the coop is definitely something that would be a valid question of the applicants as you're going through this process.
But in your opinion, when you encountered these fowl, none of them were louder than dogs?
No, I would say that. Ducks were definitely louder, I will say that.
Louder than chickens or louder?
Louder than chickens.
But not louder than dogs?
I would say it's very similar.
Okay, similar.
And that's not, that's my expert sound opinion, if you will. But I'm going on an established case here in terms of what this typical sounds are. And that's, anecdotally, I can say that I didn't hear anything that was louder than a dog.
Nick,
Thank you.
when you were talking with Cornell, which is a pretty good group,
Sure.
was there any discussion of any of the reports the CDC has put out concerning chickens?
In the salmonella?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's, I know that was a particular concern, and I think something they spoke about was more the fact that it's more of a, because I know our concern, it seemed to be, was more with the neighbors and people coming over if those chickens were to get out, and for kids, if you will, because they're more susceptible to salmonella. I think their approach to it was more the fact that it should be a concern for the person that owns them. They should be washing their hands after they handle them and taking the proper precautions. But that if they're fenced in and there's not ways for them to get out, the neighbors shouldn't be able, the ones I saw at least, it would be, a neighbor would have to go out of their way to go inside, unlock a cage and get inside to get to the chickens, or the chickens would have to be let out by someone for whatever reason, and for someone to come into contact with them that wasn't the owner.
So salmonella is not an airborne,
That's not my
Disease that-
understanding.
No, it's contact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But
Yeah.
the reason I asked Nick about the CDC is they just put out a report about a week ago entitled Multi-State Outbreak of Human Salmonella, Infections Linked to Live Poultry in Backyard Flocks.
Really?
I got it here.
Sure.
It's about a 20-page report. I just printed the first couple of pages.
Okay.
So it is a concern, and in this case, they tracked back 344 people that were sick. 31% were hospitalized. Fortunately, nobody died.
Yeah. I actually had salmonella as a kid, ironically enough. I grew up with chickens my whole life, but that's not what I got it from, ironically enough. I think that having them caged seems to, unless people you're saying this is airborne, alls I can go on is what I saw in terms of how they're permitted, and all of these are caged, if they will. There's no way of them getting out of this cage unless someone actively lets them out. And they were all in caged backyards with the exception, I believe, of one had a small area where you could access another lot. But again, they would have to be let out of their coop first. And Board Member Hammond, I haven't read that report, but I certainly think if that sounds relevant to the conversation about if we're having them go to a vet. Or not.
I would agree.
In terms of code enforcement, you were the lucky winner the past few weeks to go out there and do this. Is there someone at the town who would have the time to go out every 6 months to check up or once a year? Or would it be easier for the town to have people give certifications that they've been tested for salmonella on a regular basis, I mean, from an enforcement standpoint?
I don't think it's time. I do think it's having just the proper, knowing what you're looking for, and it doesn't, in having a further conversation with someone that actually knows what they're talking about in terms of caring for chickens and.
We do have an animal
We do have animal
code
control.
officer,
Sure,
don't
we
we?
do, which is what I was thinking in terms of how we would enforce it. We would work with him to, in the animal control office to come up with a schedule for inspecting these. So these won't, I guess what I'm saying, these aren't going to lapse again. I don't know why they weren't inspected in the past and their deadlines. So I think this is obviously a relevant issue that needs to be stayed on top of. And I don't see any reason why in this day and age you couldn't set a reoccurring appointment to re-inspect these every 6 months. But I think the requiring, I would just want to know how we could, the requiring this, is it something we'd have to do as a town code change, or is this something in terms of the documentation from the veterinarian, or is it something we can just require? I don't know.
I just worry that if we start to do an every 6-month thing, or with the number that they're out, you're going to overburden what
I wouldn't
what your
advocate, by the
staff
way,
is
for
doing.
every 6 months.
Right.
If you ask my opinion, I think if you did it every year or every 2 years, in terms of making sure that they're in compliance with the code, like we just did,
Right.
Is the fence broke, are they getting out? Is there a smell? There's some basic things you can see pretty quickly.
I think we'd be likely to know if they were getting out.
Yeah, I mean, people would call and we would check on a complaint.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, I don't want to overburden your staff.
Well, that's why, enforceability is big, but I just want to more make sure if we're getting information from someone that we actually know what we're looking at. And if
Right.
there's a generally accepted way, that didn't come up in the course of what I was looking at, but I'm sure that we could find, actually talk to a veterinarian and get them to comment on what we would be looking for. I still have more calls out too from to other towns that I haven't heard from that might have something, but having the towns I looked at, I feel pretty confident that this is a good cross-section for us to look at.
And you said you're going to be doing a few more of these in the next couple of months?
Yeah, we'll have more on the agenda. I think next month we have at least one, if not two.
Okay,
So we'll have these coming up periodically.
all right, so as more information comes, we'll,
Yeah.
When you talk to other towns, are you asking if they have a lot size
Yeah.
requirement?
And that's funny you bring that up, because some areas obviously aren't as developed as we are, and they do have the lot size. It's 5 acres is typically what they give.
Yeah.
And they're looking at, because in order to get relief from that 5 acres, they have to folks who try to come and get area variances to have them
Okay.
under that. So, something to look at if we want to approach this at the town board level in terms of making a code change. That would be something we could definitely look at.
Do we have any 5-acre properties in the town?
I wouldn't think so.
Very few,
A few.
very, 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 very
Probably
few.
none of them have chickens, I'll bet.
No,
was-
lots of deer,
Here.
but lots, not
Well,
many chickens.
one of the things I did in kind of thinking about the chickens is I called 3 realtors,
Okay.
and I asked them if they were trying to sell a house, and the house beside them had a small chicken coop, 4 to 6 chickens, well-maintained house, and so forth, what would their thinking be? Would that be a problem for them? And all 3 said they've never ran into that situation, so, but they did think, however, that if there was chickens there, it would at least be a consideration for potential buyers. It's not necessarily a showstopper, may or may not affect the price of the house. It's hard to say. You got to find the right buyer for somebody who wants chickens beside them. They did think that it would probably slow down the sale of a house as you look for that right buyer for the home. 2 of the 3 did suggest that there probably should be on larger lots than what we have in Arundequoit. So, same place we just came from. Yeah.
we did hear a case in the Seabreeze area where the lot was very, very small.
Very small, and
Yes, we did.
We didn't approve.
Right.
Yep.
But
we did not.
for most of them, they've had adequate space, but.
In general, from what I've seen, that should definitely be a factor in how not all lots are the same.
And my recollection is that owner went ahead and put them in anyway,
That's right.
and then they were removed by the town.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Just for those who are watching, if you're thinking of putting chickens in without.
It was a
Interesting
small.
to me
It
that we
won't work.
have conditions being discussed and guidelines and this type of thing for chickens, which I think is good, especially with respect to what neighbors think. And I think that was a good move to call realtors and see, because people buying a house, what we really need in this town too, if I get on my soapbox just a little bit, is the same thing for dogs. As Mr. Paulino pointed out, barking dogs can be a real nuisance. More noise than any chicken clucking around, whatever make, and there's no restrictions on them, so as far as noise is concerned, that I know of.
I think there are in the town
There
code.
actually is, it's just a matter.
And I know there's a limit. We found this out with the Barron's Road application. There's a limit on the number of dogs that you're allowed to have. I believe the chief of police has to approve 3 or more dogs at a single house.
You know, I didn't know it until recently, but my daughter has a dog that barks a lot, and she got a bark collar, where if he barks, he gets a shot. Now he doesn't do any more than woof. Yeah. So
I've heard of
it is
those.
possible to control it.
Going on that point of multiple animals on one site, we don't have anything really in the town. Like this one girl says she's gonna have 4 hens, she's got at least 1 dog. I think she said she had 2 cats. I mean, is there any limit to the number of domestic animals or farm animals that can be on a property
Bless you.
at one time? Well, dogs is 2, I know that.
Yeah, cats is 3, and then hens are up to a special use permit, so there's limits, right?
But I mean, I'm talking in total.
There is, you're saying, Joe. I see, yeah.
The one case that we had
Multiple of all, everything.
the coati, the lemur, 2 pigs, some cats, some dogs, some puppies. Birds, fish,
Snakes and iguanas.
something like that. I mean, but,
Yeah.
yeah, there is no cumulative limit, I guess.
And looking at it, again, anecdotally at the ones we're looking at tonight, I think to do more than 4 of any of these would be, you'd have to have a much bigger, you'd have to have a bigger space. In my, just looking at it, 4 seems, that's what's been approved in the past. I don't know that anybody here is coming for more than 4 tonight or not, but.
Our very first case was 15.
Was it 15? I was thinking it was 10. It
I
was
think it was 15.
over off, just south of
the
of
expressway,
104.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
but
know
we
how-
cut her to, as I recall, we let her keep what she had, but as they died off, she couldn't get more. and-
Yeah, I don't know how that would work.
Don't
Ju-
remember.
Judging what I'm saying, I don't know how
Yeah,
you'd have that. I don't.
we cut that down.
Yeah, there's no.
All right, so did you have any other general stuff before we move on to the specific cases?
No, sir.
Okay.
One other question, Dick. In the master plan, is there any mention of farm animals? Encouraging them, perhaps?
I do not believe so. And
I couldn't find it if it's there.
I don't believe so. That I would be hard pressed if to find that. If it's there, then it was slipped in without my knowledge. And I'd have to make sure it was. So. I'll have to check. I don't think so.
So our next case then,
Okay.
it's now 7:02.
ZB 1410-2, upon the matter of request by John and Ellen Simonelli for a special use permit to continue harboring 4 hens with coop run pursuant to Section 23570 of Town Code on premises 81 Pleasant Avenue in an R2 residential district.
I'm Ellen Simonelli, 81 Pleasant Avenue.
I'm John Simonelli, 81 Pleasant Avenue.
If you could raise your right hands, do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. And your chickens are doing well?
We love our chickens.
And how do your neighbors like your chicken?
I have all the letters of support from all my neighbors, as I did the first time I came. I was
Alright.
a little surprised I got as much questioning from the board when I had unanimous support from my neighbors. But I do thank all the members who did vote for me. It's been a fun project. The only regret that I have is that I didn't do it when the kids were little, because now my kids are getting older. This is my youngest son, Forrest, and this is our little neighbor, Anna, who has been a very big help in helping us with the chickens.
And I would have loved to have had all of my older kids who are now gone to have been a part of it. But they enjoy them when they're home, and it's been really, really fun, and it's very easy. I wouldn't say that it's any harder than if you had a rabbit out in an outdoor hutch. You need to make sure they're clean, you need to make sure they have food and water, you have to make sure they're safe, and you have to make sure they're warm. That's it. It's simple as that. We go out every day, we make sure that they have what they need, we collect the wonderful eggs, and they are no problem at all. Once in a while, they get squawking a little bit. Why? I don't really know. I think because they're hens and they're hoping there might be a rooster out there somewhere, and they just want to let them know where the hen house is in case one might be passing by. But other than that, the neighbors love them. We have several letters saying that they love to bring their grandchildren over. They love to have the kids helping. Everyone's been coded and making sure they wash properly when they leave. If you really have concerns about salmonella, I would be concerned again, which I brought up the first time, about the hot dog stands and all the birds that are down there, that people are going along with their ice cream and they're throwing food to the birds and they're sitting on the benches and they're sitting on the rocks where all those birds are, and I don't think anybody's washing all that much. So, and I don't think we've had any outbreaks, any sickness in the general community. There's a lot of people down there. So,
Have you had any neighbors complain to you about?
not one complaint.
Okay. And you have letters there, could you hand them to Mr. Vignette and he'll
Yep.
pass them around?
Yep, and we have some very nice drawings also from the kids.
And I see that your neighbor's daughter's here. Can you hold that sign up? It says, "I love Ellen's chickens." What does it say below that?
Their names.
The names of the chickens. Okay, all right. You gotta hold that sign up like you're at the Bills game, you know?
My understanding is that if there's any airborne disease or anything, it's really from anything that's like an enclosed garage. Like, think about somebody who has 15 chickens. They either have to have a really big coop, or they have to have like a garage or a shed that they actually have to enter into in order to clean. And then you don't have the proper circulation, and you're breathing in whatever you're taking out. But if everything's got a lot of air around it, that there is no problems. We did actually adopt 2 kittens from the pound at Christmas time. And when I went in to see Dr. Harima, our veterinarian, I talked to him about the chickens, and he said that the other 3 vets in his office all have chickens. And he didn't say I had to bring them in for vaccines or anything. He had no concerns at all. And he said if they get sick, I can bring them in, and he'll take a look at them. So I would be concerned about, before you make any codes about what might be out there, to have a veterinarian come and consult with the board and let them, they're the experts.
Well, we're looking into that. That's what
Right.
Mr. Weatherby, we've been
I
having
think having a
discussions about.
professional come in and, explain whatever, things that he comes up against or she would be appropriate.
Among the letters that are being circulated is a letter from Daisy, which I assume is in support of the chickens. It's
No,
a-
Daisy's actually one of our chickens.
Oh, Daisy is one of the chickens. So this is a picture that one of your
Yes, one of the
neighbors drew in
neighbors.
support.
Yes,
The chicken didn't draw it.
the chicken didn't draw.
No. Although, I guess they're at the San Diego Zoo is having animals do art that they're auctioning off.
But when we do, we are
Same?
planning on,
Okay.
if there is any problem with the chickens, whether they get sick or whether something gets into the coop, which we have not had any night visitors that we know of. We have a motion sensor light. There's not been any activity, no digging, no nothing. I guess because on the bank by the bay, they can get anything they want for free. Why try to break into Alcatraz when, so, and all the food, we keep all the food in the actual coop itself, and it's all locked in there. I mean, the actual.
feed them.
When we feed them. The storehouse is in the basement of our house.
And
And the
continuing,
neighbors come over and throw bread in, but other than that.
we have a letter from Anna Yato.
That's Anna
Says
right
she
here.
loves that's Anna there,
That's Anna.
who loves the chickens, and we get fresh eggs and entertainment, etc. She also has a drawing on the back, although I'm not that up, but that looks more like a rooster to me than a chicken. I don't
Don't
know.
have a rooster.
All right.
That's like a chicken to me.
I have 2 questions. First question is, for these chickens, do you have any, I don't know, carrying device that you could use to transport them to the veterinarian?
If we had to, we'd have to put them in the kitty carrier, but I couldn't fit more than one in there at a time.
So
I
you
don't
don't
know
have
how
any-
well they would transport, honestly. I don't know. They've never been in a car. I don't know how that would go. I mean, they'd probably be freaked out because their little life is pretty small, and then if I had to pick them up and take them to the vet, I mean, we do pick them up. I mean, we can handle them. Well, except for Penelope. That would be interesting. She doesn't like to be caught or picked up.
How old
So
are they?
I don't know. I don't know how that would work.
How old?
So you don't know how, okay. The second question was, are you giving out eggs to people besides your own immediate family?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, how old are the chickens?
2.5 years.
In your application, you mentioned when these chickens die off, your words, you're not going to replace them, and you'd be okay if that was a condition of this
Oh, yeah,
variance.
I'm completely, those
Okay.
were my words. Right.
Yep, thank you.
We did call the town, too, to have someone come out and inspect the coop. Like the 6 months had passed, and no one had come out to see them. And we called, and they sent the
Dog warden. or
dog warden.
Animal
And
control.
she looked at it, and she looked it over, and,
She liked it.
yeah. Maybe there could be a form she could fill out once a year, with all the things on a checklist that she's looking for that could be filed.
I think you make a good point. As this whole thing evolves, and we try various things, to try to keep things up to date, because, like you say, 6 months went by and nothing happened. Well, I'm not too surprised, because there's a lot of other things going on, too. But if there was a form or a postcard sent or something that would just maintain the contact because we have a special use permit going on, I think that would be great, very helpful, and maybe prevent problems in the future.
Well, I know on farms, too, they have veterinarians that actually go to the farm, because there's no way to take all those farm animals into a vet, so they have to go to them. So, I don't know anything about, Dr. Harriman didn't say anything about needing vaccinations or any concerns or worries other than just keeping your hands clean and don't put your fingers in your mouth. And don't,
I like
don't
the
be
idea
touching the
of
feces.
a checklist, I mean, I'll take the checklist around, I'll look at it,
Yeah,
for free.
right.
There we
I'm
go.
just kidding, but, I mean, it would make it streamlined, it would make it uniform for everybody, and you'd have the contact.
It's been a fun neighborhood project. Everybody's really enjoyed it.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone who'd like to come and talk about it? All right, we'll close the hearing with respect to that application and move on to the next case. Thank you very much.
ZB 1410-3, upon matter of request by Karen and John Wagner for a special use permit to continue harboring 3 Cayuga ducks with house pen pursuant to 23570 of Town Code on premises 260 Daly Boulevard in an R1 residential district.
Good evening. My name is Karen Wagner, and I live at 260 Daly Boulevard.
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
We've had our Cayuga ducks for 2.5 years, and the neighbors have ranged from being supportive to very enthusiastic of them, and I have checked in with them regularly to see if have any complaints about any issues that they might be having. I think some of them might have written letters in support. I did save the one letter of the neighbor that is most affected by the ducks in terms of visibility, in terms of proximity. So if I could read that out loud, that's okay? Or would you like
Okay.
me to pass it around?
You can read it.
Okay.
It's your presentation, so you can
All
do it
right.
any way you'd like.
We reside to the east of the Wagners and enjoy seeing their ducks. They are of no nuisance to us and are taken care of exceptionally. Honestly speaking, our niece and nephew look forward to seeing the ducks when they come to visit. Amanda and I think it is great for the kids in the community to see a different type of animal and be exposed to new things. As we are directly next to the Wagners, we can honestly say there are no negative effects from the ducks. They are not loud or obnoxious to any degree. I strongly feel that the ducks should be allowed to stay and that the permit be reissued. Thank you for your time.
That wasn't a letter that you attached to the packet, though, right?
No, that
So
wasn't.
it's in addition to that.
This is an additional one.
As I recall, when you were here before, one of your neighbors expressed concern about the ducks' influence on the dogs in the neighborhood.
Right.
And I noticed there's not a letter.
She's
either in-
moved away.
Oh, she moved
She
away.
moved away a couple months after that, actually.
Okay. And other than, and before she moved away, did she have any complaints about them?
No, not at all, and I don't think she could have even heard them. I did choose on purpose the quietest of all the duck breeds.
I remember that.
And I don't think you could hear them when they do get quacky more than a couple houses away, so. And she was 4 houses away in the back property.
So has any of your neighbors said anything to you other
No,
than
the one-
ranging from support to enthusiastic support?
I did ask the one neighbor, because the duck, when I do let them out, when they walk down their little ramp, they make little soft kind of quacking sounds. And it is kind of near their bedroom window, so I asked if that was okay, and she said she loves hearing them in the morning, so.
Now, you mentioned your ducks are 2 years old and they have a life expectancy of 6 to 7 years, and that you will not have any more ducks after that. And if we made that as a condition, you'd be okay with that?
Yes, I would. I'd also, if I may, I'd like to comment on the vet, the discussion, the visit. I agree with the previous people that I have transported them to the vet before when they were very young. I did get the permission to have 4 ducks, and now I have 3. One of them had a lame issue, and I did take it to the veterinarian. I did put it in the cat carrier, and it's very stressful for a bird to be transported in a car. It's very different from a dog who's used to getting in and out of a car, and dogs get stressed at the vet, as many of you might know, and a bird much, much more. And I think especially as they got older, that would be a concern of mine to take them. I have a bachelor's in animal science from Cornell, and it's been decades since I got that, but I do remember salmonella is very hygiene related, and if there's a lot of manure and poor air circulation, that's when it becomes an issue. So I think that might be something that that you may want to consider before requiring that every year they take them to the vet.
You said you had 4, now you have 3?
I do, because the one, I gave them antibiotics when they were very young, and I've learned now that creates leg deformities in ducks. They're very sensitive to that, and so as she got heavier and heavier, she got more and more lame, and so I ended up euthanizing her.
Okay. And how did you get her to the vet?
I took her in a cat carrier.
And that was the experience that you were relating?
Right, yeah.
Do you have a vet that would come to the house and take care
I
of
don't know,
it?
I'd have to look into that. Yeah, I'd have to look into that if that is a requirement that the board makes.
Yeah, there are a couple of traveling vets here in Arundequoit.
Okay, well, that's wonderful.
And I'll just pass the letter, and then these are some pictures and for those of you who haven't seen the setup in our backyard, too.
Do we have any lame ducks in town?
Thinking we needed to get our ducks in a row, but I wasn't going to say that.
Quit your day job, boy.
I won't. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Anyone who'd like to come up and talk to us about it? All right.
But you might want to, you don't have to read them, but there was 4 letters sent.
There were 4 letters that were sent in support of the application that were attached as part of the packet. They were from John Holland and his wife, who reside at 229 Seville Drive, Megan Rusi, age 8, who lives next door, Alphonse and Elizabeth Van Acker at 254 Daly, and Jean and Terry Trieste at 217 Seville Drive. And then the letter that was read. And the letter that was read was from Brian White and Amanda Young at 268 Daly Boulevard. All right, so we'll close the hearing with respect to that case and move on to our next case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
ZB 1410-4, upon the matter request by Jane Adams for special use permit to continue harboring 4 domestic ducks with coop pen pursuant to 23570 of Town Code on premises 2373 Titus Avenue in an R2 residential district.
Hello, I'm Jane Adams, and I live at 2373 Titus Ave.
You could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Okay, well, I'm applying for a new permit because I had one for a year. I haven't had any complaints from any of my neighbors, and I know when I reapplied, I asked, and she said, if you had gotten any complaints, I definitely would have heard about it. So
Okay.
I'm assuming nobody had any complaints other than that. Again, most of my neighbors, the four bordering neighbors that border my yard, all have had no problems with them. I've given eggs to my neighbors to try them out and stuff, and some of them liked them. So one of my neighbors in particular gets them all the time. And I give them to my family, my son and stuff like that. So I don't think we've had any increase in rodents. That was one of the concerns. And you talked about where we store the food. And I have mine in a metal garbage can inside the garden shed with a tight lid, so I think that's a safe place. And another thing is, they recommend only giving them what they're going to eat within 10 to 15 minutes, so there's no food left in their feeding dish. So that's another thing. They get fed twice a day, morning and night, and just the amount that they can eat right away. I don't have any other, specific things. I do have some photos of my yard and pen and of the ducks. Want to pass those along. And, I'm asking for an extended period this time. And I asked for 5 years because I think that would cover their life expectancy probably.
Do you have any expectation of getting more when the ones that you have are no longer with you?
I'm thinking about, that's why I said if I went 5 years and that covered their life expectancy, I'd probably be ready to let them go at that point. I mean, they are a little bit of work, you got to get up every morning, get out there and feed them and stuff, and it's not more than what I expected, but I'm thinking 5 years down the road, I probably am not going to really want to be doing that anymore, so, yeah, I'd be fine with,
So if we put a condition into that effect, that would be okay?
sure, that would be fine with me.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Step right up.
My name is Martha Piotrowski, and I live at 2377 Titus Avenue, right next door. When she went on vacation, I took care of the ducks, 7 o'clock in the morning. And if I took longer than 60 seconds to open the gate, they let me know because they could see I was coming to feed them in the morning. Same thing at night. So that's the only time they quacked. They let you know. But there was only one incident where I came in the backyard and she was standing there and the ducks were not outside. They were in the pen. I go, what's going on? She goes, look. I didn't see anything. She says, look on the telephone wire. There was a hawk that had circled, and so she scooted them into the pen. And that hawk stayed there for a good 10 minutes, wasn't it? Or longer. Yeah, it just, I go, okay, well, it's natural, they see the ducks, they want to get it. So other than that, the good thing about the hawk is that the rabbits were eliminated. No more rabbits. Okay, but other than that, no, as far as the smell goes, there is no smell. My mother didn't complain about anything either, and she's 103, so I'm good to go.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak in favor of this application? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone who'd like to talk to us about it? Step right up, sir.
Ron Lerner, 3 Marks Hill Lane, 14617 off St. Paul Boulevard. Resident of Arundequite since 1942 and a longtime observer of nature in Arundequite. I can only say that it seems that the people applying for these special use permits seem to be uniquely dedicated and qualified to maintain these creatures. Bigger annoyances in Arundequite are loud motorcycles, sirens, are overly abundant deer, and feral cats. I don't see where there's a problem with these animals in any way. At the last meeting, there was a lady who complained adamantly about the possible influx of predators. Well, where I live, we've got hawks, owls, raccoons, possums, skunks, coyotes, foxes. The whole gang are there, and we see them wandering around, and there's nobody in my cul-de-sac that has chickens or ducks. I think that the amount of predators that we have is governed by whatever the natural food supply is concerned, and I don't see where keeping these animals is really a problem for anyone. When I was a kid, which is really dating me, there was a lot of people that had livestock, such as chickens, ducks, and also somebody even had some pigs off of Titus Avenue, and of course the Sewillow Farms and things like that. I do think that the process of having a yearly vetting of their condition and cleanliness is a good idea, and I think that's essential. But most of these folks seem to be uniquely dedicated to keeping them and keeping them well. A rooster, I could see where that would be a problem, but most towns do not allow roosters because not too many people like to be awakened at 5 o'clock in the morning. I would think that your steps on having a check-off card or something like this would be the way to go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So we will close the hearing with respect to that case. We will take a brief recess, and we will resume at approximately 8:20. appears that the only applicant who's remained is with respect to 2373 Titus Avenue. So it's a case where the last shall be first. With respect to, oh, I'm sorry, I got to find my paperwork here.
Mr. Chairman, I have a suggestion.
Yes.
We have 3 almost identical cases to be brought up here. And we heard, the gentleman is still here, by the way, that everybody seemed to be conscientious about what they're doing, have done a good job, and every single one of them has made presentations that show the neighbors support it. I don't know if it's legally possible, but I was wondering if we could make a motion to cover all 3 in one shot.
I think that we have to make findings with respect to each of the applications, and therefore I don't think that it's possible for us to do that. But we can incorporate by reference discussion of one into the discussion of another and save ourselves repetition that way. That would work. So with respect to the application at 2373 Titus Avenue, this is a type 2 action for seeker purposes. And does someone wish to make a motion with respect to this application?
I'll make a motion. Was just looking, your special use permit motion is a little different than your area variance.
Just for the benefit of our viewing audience, while Mr. LaPerry's checking that out, my understanding is, and our attorney will tell me if I'm wrong, a special use permit, as Mr. Weatherby made reference earlier, is a use that the town board has determined is consistent and appropriate with the zoning restrictions in the town, but that there may be special considerations with respect to individual situations that should be addressed in order to make sure that that particular application comports with the overall goals of the code. And therefore, it's not a question of whether or not we think the use is appropriate in the town, but whether we think that there are some special conditions that need to be imposed in order to make it compatible. Would that be a fair assessment?
That's absolutely correct.
All right, so that's,
Okay, so, getting back to.
fill that in.
Yeah, getting back to 2373 Titus Avenue, use variance for harboring the ducks, the 4 ducks in her backyard. I find that we should approve this one, and the reason for it is not going to change the character of the neighborhood. It is a self-created problem. However, we have approved this before, a few years back, and overwhelmingly, the lady does keep it in very good condition. Her neighbors have said they enjoy it. So I believe that we should approve it. However, I think the stipulations, we talked about it being 6 months, we talked about it being a year, we talked about it being 2 years. It has been a couple of years since her last visit with the town, and I don't want to overburden the town with unnecessary inspections. So I would recommend, and we could talk about this, but I would recommend a 2-year inspection from the town, whether it be the animal warden or whomever the town, and if they do come up with a checklist at that point to utilize. But I believe a 2-year period would be adequate enough for someone to re-inspect, and basically just re-inspect it for overall conditions and cleanliness and any issues regarding upsetting the neighbors. But based on that, I believe we should approve it.
I would second that motion, and would also incorporate in the findings, all of the findings that we made in the decision that we made on July 1st, 2013, which are set out in our decision of our meeting for that day.
Now, I have, if it's open to discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Mhm.
My question would be, if dogs and cats need to be checked once a year, why wouldn't birds need to be checked once a year? Why 2 years as opposed to 1? I mean, humans, dogs, cats, we all have to go to the doctor once a year for our checkup.
We all have to, but I don't know that people do. And and again, part of this is, in my opinion, putting extra burden on our staff to check things.
Oh, I
mean,
apologize, then maybe I just misheard. Our staff is going to go out every 2 years?
Yeah.
Was there a requirement that they have their birds checked by a doctor once a year?
No, I don't believe that be necessary. Again, based on what we've heard tonight by the different applicants, and that there's no proof, or there's no vaccination, or there's no real way to know when they're sick, I guess, is the
Well, there is a way to know when they're sick, to test them. I mean, you can test them to see if they have salmonella. I mean, those are tests that can be performed. We didn't know what the Ebola virus was until like 3 months ago. Nobody thought that was going to come out anywhere. So I'm just wondering if we give someone the opportunity for 5 years to own an animal that's only going to be checked up by a non-physician 2 times during that period. I mean, in my mind, I would think, and I probably would vote against this, unless there's some aspect that these animals will be checked up by a physician or someone in the medical profession.
Would you like to have a condition then that indicates that the owner shall submit to the town some kind of certification from a veterinarian? It doesn't even have to be a certification, a letter that a veterinarian has examined the animals and found them to be in good health?
Well, I would want an inspection, but a test for salmonella. I mean, that's one of the things that I would want. But I would want once a year that they could have a doctor say that these animals are safe.
So to put the burden on the owner to submit it to the town?
Absolutely, to submit it, yeah, to the town.
The condition would be that the owner submit to the town satisfactory health report from a veterinarian, including testing for salmonella. Would that be right?
That would be satisfactory to me.
That be acceptable to you?
No.
No.
I don't think it's necessary. Based on what we heard from Nick, and based on what we heard from all the other applicants in reference to this, I don't believe it is an issue if it's, and I think the other thing too is, I guess I don't know how prevalent the salmonella would be, and I don't know, we haven't had any issues with it. We haven't had any people getting sick, and no complaints about it, so.
I mean, it sounds to me like this is an unknown unknown. I mean, we don't know what's out there.
Well,
so if we don't know what's out there, why not be safe and
Again,
say?
chickens have been raised in this country for eons. You
And
know,
I think
and
Mr. Hammond-
I understand, but that's one man's opinion, and
Well, no, I was going to
also-
say he was reading from the CDC
I understand
about
that.
how people were
Yeah, it's not
hospitalized.
even my opinion, it's the CDC, which I think we should give some credence to.
Well, I understand that, but you also have Cornell Cooperative saying that it's a common thing that people are getting chickens now, and I don't believe across the country they're making everybody test their chickens. And again, if it becomes an issue, then I think it might be something we throw in there. But we're putting more obstacles in the way that are that's why I said every 2 years as opposed to every 6 months or a year. We're putting more obstacles in the way that are somewhat unnecessary.
But I thought that
in my opinion.
all residents of the town who do own dogs have to go through a similar step in that they have to submit proof that they're,
The dogs have a 3-year rabies shot, 1-year license.
every year they have to submit something for the license.
No, the license gets renewed, the rabies shot is for 3 years. So it's
Okay.
every 3 years for a dog that
And I would find it
that
hard,
is required to intervene.
not that I encourage it, but I would find it hard pressed to find most of the dogs in our town that are licensed every year. Or relicensed every year.
So we give the chicken owners a pass?
No, I'm
I
not saying
don't,
we
I don't
give
follow
them
that
a- I'm
line.
not
Well, they don't have a license, they have a special use permit,
All right,
which,
I don't say we're again, we're throwing in a roadblock that I don't believe is necessary, but again, that's just my opinion.
Well, the motion is what it is. I'm
Well,
just giving my comments.
The alternative that you would have under the procedural rules is you could make a motion to amend the motion to include that condition if you wanted to do that, and then if that was seconded, we would vote on the amendment and then vote on the motion as amended or unamended, depending upon how that works. So if you wanted to do that.
Before I take an action, I think it's open for discussion. I'd like to
Right.
hear if anyone else has any comments.
Okay.
I would certainly support that amendment.
Yes, I would too.
I think it's our responsibility to, to think about the public health interest in this whole thing. And this could change down the road, but I think for now, that's a good idea to have a consistent control by the town to make sure, as best we can, that people don't get sick from these things. Maybe later on we'll know more about it, but right now I think it's a good idea. So I mean, I'm not saying this amendment, if we approve that, would be forever, but see, at least for the time being, see what happens.
Well, that would, if the motion is amended, the amendment would apply to this special use permit and any other special use permit that we granted with that condition.
Right.
And as I understand it, the application for the special use permit in this case is for a 5-year period, which is expected to cover the remaining life expectancy of the 4 ducks that are present living on Titus Avenue, and that if and when they passed, there would be a reapplication before there would be other ducks to replace them. And was that a condition that we wanted to add to the motion, that it would be limited to the ducks who are present now?
Again, not part of my motion, no.
Okay, all right, that was part of the application, though, I think.
And again, if she, a couple of the applicants had said they're not going to continue it after the ones they have now, that's fine.
Okay.
But
I was just clarifying that. So did you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion in lines with everything we've talked about this evening. I think it's time for the town to come up with a standardized way of handling this, and I think that one of the standard ways to handle this is to require all people who do harbor fowls at their homes to have them to submit proof annually, once a year, that from some type of a medical professional that the animal is in good health and that it has passed a test to show that there is no salmonella.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the amendment?
I 1 year is the number that I came up with. If it's unreasonable, if someone thinks it should be for a longer period, I'm open to hear that.
I would think if you're going to do it, I would do the 2 years, because again, you're just adding the burden of, like the one woman said, that, taking the birds in is a very hard thing to do. They can't handle the car ride or whatever the case, so that means they're going to have to incur an expense to have a vet come out to their house, an extra expense, and I think yearly it's a little much, but.
I think that, and I'm not sure of this, but I believe that you can check for salmonella in manure, that you don't really have to take the bird in. I'd want to check that, but I think that's true.
I didn't hear that.
I think you can check manure for salmonella. I believe it shows, so I'm not sure the birds have to drag in. Frankly, moving chickens around, I've done it many times. We used to throw them in a burlap bag and take them where we were going to take them. And they seem just fine when they come out.
I'm not sure that's approved by the SPCA.
Well, probably not. We've done it. But I'm not sure that we're not making too big a deal over moving the chickens, but that's another debate.
By the same token, too, I don't like having my car inspected every year either. What a pain. Go down, get it
It's true, it
inspected, and then you have to fix things, whatever. And I think if we do it with cars, we could do it with chickens.
There's a way to do it, chickens and ducks.
So any further discussion on the motion to amend the motion to impose a condition to require, and is it annual that you're moving for?
Yes.
Annual attestation by a medical professional that the chickens are or ducks are in good health and free from salmonella. That's the amendment?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Is
I
this,
mean, yes, Mr. Chairman.
is this the case where we should also introduce the end-of-life condition, or is that a separate vote? Once they're gone, they can't be replaced.
That would be unless you wanted to amend the amendment to add that as a further condition of the amendment.
Well, again,
No. That would be an amendment to Mr. Paulino's motion that Mr. Thomas has seconded.
The amendment being that,
In addition to the 1 year,
I believe that it says here that as the chickens die off, they're not going to be replaced.
Most of the applicants, in fact, every applicant agreed to that, but I think you wanted in the deal.
Then yes, I would amend my motion to require an amendment of the original motion to have the medical professional certification on an annual basis and to limit it to the application which requests it only for the life of the existing fowl.
do you agree to that? All right, so that's now the motion now is to amend the motion to include two conditions. One that requires an annual certification by a medical professional that the fowl are in good health and free from salmonella. And the second, that the life of the permit is limited to a period of 5 years or the life of the fowl in residence, whichever comes first. Right?
Except for the certification of the medical professional that the applicant or the individual who receives the variance will submit evidence of that.
Right, they're going to
the
submit
town.
that
They
every
need to
year.
submit it. Yes,
Right,
that's
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Are we all clear on what the amendment is? All right. So all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
nay.
Okay. Any abstentions? So the motion to amend it carries by a vote of 6 in favor and 1 opposed. So now the motion is to, and I got to write the conditions, so give me a second here. So it's that the owner will submit medical professional certification of good health and salmonella. When Michelle types up the minutes, she'll have to figure out how to spell salmonella right. Free fowl and limit in duration to 5 years or the life in being, whichever first. So that is the motion that's now in front of us. All those any discussion with respect to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So the motion as amended carries 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. We are all present. Given the fact that we have 4 applications of a foul nature before us tonight, I am proposing that we deviate from the normal routine and we're going to do the foul ones first and leave the sign for last so that we can just roll along and the discussion.
Could I ask a question or not?
Later. Next application is with respect to 81 Pleasant Avenue. This is a type 2 action for seeker purposes. Does someone wish to make a motion with respect to this application? Seeing none, I'll make a motion that we approve this application and grant the special use permit with the same terms and conditions that we attached to the application with respect to 2373 Titus Avenue. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd just like to comment in general on these topics. We have no interest here in really taking away people's pets. But I do think we need to use an abundance of caution in the future, and maybe at the townwide level, maybe they could look at this at the code level. I just wanted to say that.
Okay.
I believe they have been.
I mean, it's currently allowed under town code. So I mean, I guess if and when we were to look at this in the future, it would have to be looking at ways to, some of the conditions you guys have talked about, there's a lot of things you could factor into it.
One of the things that people may not be aware of is there is a requirement that as members of the board that we go to periodic training and have a certain amount of hours of training every year or 2-year period. And the trainings that I've been to have always related to basics of zoning, basics of planning, seeker review, lighting, landscaping, environmental impact, things of that nature. One of the things that we brought up to Mr. Weatherby when he joined us at the beginning of this year, which...
And I've brought up to others.
And he's brought up to other towns, and because we're not the only town that are dealing with this, is the possibility of organizing, and I believe that it is in the planning stage, early stages, a educational opportunity for us and other zoning board members in other towns to learn about, how to handle applications with chickens and ducks and pigeons and other animals that come before us that we're not really familiar with. So I think that's going to be happening.
And I have suggested it to organizations that put on those that have different topics. I think you'll notice this month for the county, I think there's one on transportation, there's one on, they have another one too that is, so they have different topics. So we've suggested it to them that they should look at that as an option.
All right. So any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, that motion incorporated the findings from the prior?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And it incorporates not only the findings from the 2373 case, but it also incorporates the findings that we made with respect to this application the last time they were before us, which was, that meeting took place on June 4th, 2012. The next application pertains to 260 Daly Boulevard. This is also a type 2 action for seeker purposes. Does anyone wish to make a motion with respect to this application?
I'll make a motion that we approve the request for the special application, if I can say it, I'm sorry, and that the applicant will continue to house 3 ducks with the same rules and guidelines that we approved a year or so ago, and the same conditions that we've given the other applications tonight in terms of medical care and no replacements as these ducks leave the herd, if you will.
And we would reaffirm and reconfirm the findings that we previously made at the meeting on March 5th, 2012, when that matter was previously before us. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Well, just one, this particular applicant didn't necessarily say that she wouldn't continue to replace the ducks.
She didn't say it, but when I asked her, oh, she does say.
She did say it.
She says, I will not have any more ducks after them,
Okay.
Right.
in her letter.
All right, very good.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. We all remain present. Next item is 54 Rudman Road. This is a type 2 action for seeker purposes as well. Does anyone wish to make a motion with respect to this application?
Not that I want to correct you, Chairman, but it's 22 Rudman.
Yeah.
Thank you. The record of motions has 54 printed on it. So I'll amend that to 22 Rudman Road, which is still a type 2 action for seeker purposes. It's just a little further down the street. Does anyone wish to make a motion with respect to 22 Rudman Road?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve this request for the variance for the harboring of 3 to 4 hens on the property at 22 Rudman Road. with the following findings. Basically, they're the same as the other three cases, and would carry the same proof of compliance as was mentioned in the other cases.
With the 2-year inspection, right?
Same as 2373 Titus Avenue. I'll second the motion and incorporate in it the findings, the following findings. Through the applicant's testimony and information provided to the board, harboring of the 3 to 4 female chickens for egg production for personal consumption and to keep as pets meets the criteria that are set forth in Town Code Section 23570B. It does not present any danger to the neighboring property, excessive noise, or offensive emission of odors or fumes, and there would not be any detriment to the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community. The location of the coop and the area in the rear yard is an appropriate area for the chicks to be located. At the previous meeting in September, there was a neighbor who spoke against the proposal with general concerns regarding potential for increased activity of predator species in the neighborhood. There was testimony from people tonight indicating that there hadn't been any experience of that at other locations that have been improved, and that was a general concern that was raised, not a particularized concern with respect to the specific chickens that are at the applicant's property and have been there. The neighbors indicated that there were no issues raised by their presence, and the applicant agreed to have inspections of the chicks by a medical professional and to have the circumstances reviewed as deemed appropriate by the town, which is provided in the conditions, and to monitor any concerns that were raised by neighbors or other members of the community. And she also agreed that her brood would be kept together, and that when the brood passed, she would apply for a permit before seeking to house any new chicks. So those findings would all be incorporated along with the other conditions of the that were imposed with respect to 23 Titus Avenue, 81 Pleasant Avenue, and 260 Daly Boulevard. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. The entire board continues to be present. The last application has nothing to do with chickens, ducks, or animals. 2701 Culver Road, this is a type 2 action for seeker purposes. Does anyone wish to make an application with respect, or a motion with respect to this application?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the variance, we approve the variance as applied for, with the following limitation, that the signage be allowed to be turned on or illuminated while the business is in operation, during business hours. So during the tax season, if they're open till 9 o'clock at night, they can leave the light on until 9 o'clock at night. But when they are...
Would you, I'm thinking that...
I'm just trying to think that our job is to make our variances as minimal as possible. And if the illumination is only necessary when people are trying to come in, if they're closed, I don't see a need for the illumination.
Well, I think the illumination also serves a purpose of notifying people of where their business are when they're driving by. So I was going to suggest that perhaps we allow it to go from dusk to 10 and until 10, dusk to 10 at night.
Dawn till 10. Dusk till 10.
Dusk till 10. That way it would only be on when it needs to be on to be seen. During the day, it wouldn't be lit. And I think 10 o'clock, people traveling by, it would draw attention to the fact that they're there.
Well, then I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Oh, you only want it 9 during tax season?
I'm just going to withdraw it.
Well, I didn't mean to
That's all
jump
right.
on you. No, go ahead.
I think your motion's fine with the exception of the time limit. I just, like the gentleman said, make it dusk to dawn. It's not an offensive sign. There's nobody in the neighborhood that would complain about it. They are running a business, and in my opinion, when you're running a business, you wanna get as much advertising out there as you can. They are a business in Arundequite. I'm a good advocate, strong advocate for businesses in Arundequite, and I believe leaving the sign lit, as long as it's not offending anybody, and I didn't see anybody in front of a board tonight that said it was offensive, and I believe, it's not that big, obnoxious of a sign or anything like that. It's a very handsome looking sign that I think that should be lit from dusk to dawn.
Is there a second for that motion?
Well, I tend to agree with both of you gentlemen. However, I think Mr. Paulino is correct that we are supposed to approve the minimum variance necessary. And the applicant did, he was satisfied with it, even at 10 p.m. cutoff.
So do we have a second for the motion, which, right now, the motion is the sign to be illuminated dusk to dawn.
I'll second it.
All right.
Get on to discussion.
And then, if someone was, did you want to make an amendment then to limit it to dusk to 10 p.m.?
I will make that amendment.
I'll second that.
And you'll second that one? Okay. So on the amendment to limit the illumination from dusk till 10 p.m., all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Yeah, nay.
Okay. And any abstentions?
I'm abstaining.
So, all right, so the motion to amend passes 5 votes in favor, 1 opposed, 1 abstention. We're all still present, so that motion passes. So now the motion is that the sign is to be illuminated from dusk to 10 p.m. And as to that motion, is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor.
Gentlemen, before you put the hammer down, what about in the morning hours? In the certain times of year, the morning hours are dark, till 8 o'clock in the morning.
That's why I abstained, right there.
So you've also got to light it up in the morning.
All right, so,
So, again, it's a short period of time, but it's 2 times a year for, that you have some morning hours that it should be lit.
all right, so with respect to the morning, I'll propose an amendment that would allow it to be illuminated from 6 a.m. till dawn.
I guess my question, my whole problem with the thing is, if the sign is illuminated during the day, it's certainly not going to offend anybody, not going to keep anybody awake, and the people that own the sign have to pay for it if they want to put it on during the day.
Well, they had talked about having it on from dusk to dawn. They hadn't talked about having it on during the day. They weren't asking to have it illuminated during the day, only at night, from dusk until dawn.
Well, if we limit it till dusk,
So
okay,
we're
I see
talking
what you're
dusk
saying.
to 10
Like
p.m.
all night long.
All night long, they were talking about. We're now limited to 10 in the evening from dusk, and now we're talking about from 6 in the morning until dawn.
That's my point. If it's 6 till dawn,
Can I just make a comment just in enforceability? I would urge you to pick a time.
Yes.
Because dusk is a moving, let's pick some, so that we can actually enforce the decision. If that's how you, if you're choosing to go that route, which I won't say how I feel about that, but if, pick a time so that we can.
I would guess that they're probably not going to open up before 7 a.m. So maybe we could say that they could illuminate from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m.
All I was thinking again was.
That way we have an hour.
I was thinking about the people who are passing by on their way to work, that they'll see the sign, be reminded that the business is there, and they might want to patronize and have their taxes done there. That's why I was thinking 6.
Again, that's why I think you should let it be lit all night long. There's people that drive by it all night long. It's a business. And again, we were trying to encourage business. Most of the businesses along Ridge Road East keep their signs lit all the time. Again, it's it's a business, it's a business building, it's not gonna hurt the character of the neighborhood, and nobody complained about it, so, and it's not an offensive sign. If it was in a neighborhood, then you'd have to think about lighting it and having it an obnoxious light keeping somebody awake. But it's,
Do we put any time restraints on the urgent care that's there? That's lit, a lit sign, isn't it?
Urgent
Yeah.
care is open all the time, aren't they?
I don't know if they
Not
are.
usually.
No.
Like there is.
so,
No, we didn't put I don't recall a limit on urgent care.
so if it's on the same building, you're gonna put a limit on one, and you're not gonna put a limit on the other.
That's a good point.
I agree with that point, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning. The motion that we approved was dusk to 10 PM. For enforcement purposes, we were asked to put a starting time on it. Do we want, what time would we want it to start? I'm thinking that on some days it gets dark as early as 4 in the afternoon. They'd still be open, but it gets dark. We're heading into that time in another few weeks. Would 4 o'clock in the afternoon sound like a reasonable time to start?
Dusk is dusk.
Again, and I know Nick wasn't a fan of it, but I think dusk to dawn is the best, easiest way to do it. I mean,
It was just it was more of a practical matter.
you know, you could
That-
put
that
4
time
to,
tip-
4
Time
to,
actually changes, but
My
that's
only
fine.
concern is the
4
fact
PM to
that
8
we're gonna
8
have 170 square feet of illuminated sign on that building when there are 4 tenants. That's a lot of illuminated sign. That's my concern. And if they want to have it on both sides, if they want to have it on the east side and the south side, I mean, that's,
Well, they haven't asked for the south side.
only asked for
but
these.
if someone else wants to have it on both, because I think urgent care has it on 2 faces of the property.
Urgent care has it on 2 faces so that people who are coming for urgent care can see it from the expressway. That's why we had it up high on the south side, so they could see it if they're coming from the
So
west.
my concern is that if it's completely, if the property is full and there are 4 tenants and 4 tenants want to have illuminated signs all night long, that is a lot of signage.
I agree.
That is a heck of a lot of signage in one spot. And I don't think that, I think that will change the nature of the neighborhood. It'll look like, you know, something that I don't want to see. That's my concern, and that's the reason why I think we should put the limit on this. But if the board disagrees, that's, you know, I'm just planning for the future.
It's a business building. Again, I disagree with it. It's,
All right, why don't we
it's there
just
for a
go
reason.
around and let's see if we can figure out where we're at. So, Mr. Paulino, we know that you're at a limit in the evening. And what time would you propose for the morning, Jim?
I'm sorry, I was just remembering that this is a residential district. It's an R6, not a business district. What was the question, Mr. Chairman?
What times would you?
Well, hold on a second, let's get the accurate definition of R6. I understand what you're saying, but R6 is a business residential district.
Okay, it's a mixed,
I mean, it looks like the.
mixed-use district.
Down here where there's some business office, professional offices, if you will.
Right.
So that's why that's that zoning code, it's not like
Okay.
it's R1.
I would be fine with 6 a.m. till 10 p.m.
6 p.m.,
6
6 a.m. to 10
10
p.m.,
p.m.
that the sign could be illuminated.
Odds are they won't illuminate.
Like that, exactly, 6 to 10.
6 to
I was gonna
10?
say 7 to 10, but 6
Mr.
to 10.
LaPerry likes dusk to dawn. I can go with 6 to 10. Mr. Thomas?
I kind of like 6 to 10.
6 to 10?
6 to 10.
6 to 10.
All right, so the consensus seems to be that, so that we'll, would amend the motion, the sign can be illuminated from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. On that motion, there was, the first and the second have accepted both of those. Well, no, you made the motion, you didn't accept it. All right, so Mr. LaPerry is withdrawing his motion. Mr. Polino, would you like to
Yes,
reinstate the
so
motion now? Okay, so Mr. Polino has moved, Mr. Thomas has seconded. The motion is to grant the variance with the sign can be illuminated from 6 in the morning until 10 p.m. at night. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
All right, so any abstentions? All right, so the motion, we have 6 votes in favor, 1 opposed, no abstentions. We all continue to be present, and the motion passes. I think that brings us to the end of this evening's agenda, and therefore, we are adjourned.